And I am here today with Annette Walters from Connected Life Coaching, and that means it is Life Coach Friday.
Woo!
Good morning.
I am so glad we are back. We had that snafu 2 weeks ago. So
We did.
we're
We
gonna
had technical difficulties.
yeah, so watch for the secret Life Coach Friday. We will be posting that again. It was so good too.
It
I
was.
don't
And
know.
you isn't that just the way we were, we thought we were so on top of it. We were going to pre-tape and then go ahead and release it the same time we normally do Life Coach Friday. But that just didn't work out. So here
Yep.
we are. But there is a bonus Life Coach Friday that's going to come out sometime.
Sometime soon. We'll define the soon later.
Yeah, exactly. And today we are talking about, when is it safe to be vulnerable? Do you have a hard time being vulnerable with other people, or do you have a hard time getting somebody you care about to open up? These interrelationship situations, they show up in all kinds of different ways. And vulnerability is such a big topic, Annette.
It really is. And I would like to credit Brene Brown for bringing it to the front and center for everybody. Her shame research, I can't believe she's been doing it for, I think, 15 or 20 years. And she actually got a lot of shame herself for going into shame researching. But it is at the core of a lot of things that we do. That choice to be vulnerable, or really choosing not to be vulnerable in most of our life, actually hinders us. And then the shame just keeps us from being vulnerable. It's kind of like a vicious circle. And so, really what we're going to talk about today is how to kind of embrace it while maybe even protecting yourself. Because, a lot of reason we don't become vulnerable, we don't show our soft underbelly, if you will, is because we're thinking that we're going to get hurt. And I think getting hurt is what drives a lot of our kind of odd behaviors or bad decisions, because we almost think about doing that, I just need to protect myself, rather than stepping out into a life that, golly, we would all love to live. So,
I
mhm.
wanted to ask you, what are the benefits of time and place, obviously. And I think from my personal perspective, I feel that I tend to be an open book and call myself an oversharer. There's a lot more about me that I will share with you that you probably never want to know. It is just my way, and it doesn't often occur to me that that could put me in a position of being hurt. It's a little different. And I think growing up in Hawaii too had a lot to do with that, because there were so many different ways to do things or see things, because it was such a multicultural experience. So I was very used to being exposed to a lot of different ways and things, and sharing different ways and things. But I've been thinking about this as we've been working towards doing this today. What are those benefits of being vulnerable? Because we talk about, okay, when is it safe? How do you do it? But why is it important to express vulnerability?
Because when you express vulnerability, it's when you're actually showing up as yourself. The
Hmm.
problem of not showing up as yourself, especially when you're trying to connect with people. I did a friendship mini camp back in December. And, one of the reasons why people have so much trouble connecting and making real friends is because they're not actually being vulnerable to show who they really are. We put on these facades, if you will, and then when people connect to us, they only connect to that facade. They
Mm.
don't actually connect to us, and we can't keep it up forever. And so it's a weak or non existent actual connection. And other people are doing the same thing. And so we get connecting to something that doesn't actually exist. We wonder why we are so lonely and we are so just disconnected. And that's become such an open sore in the last 2 years, as we have been then more physically disconnected from one another.
Yeah, that's for sure. That it's definitely been easier in ways to not make those connections over the last couple of years. Do you
Mhm.
think that, so when somebody is vulnerable and sharing what does that look like? It looks like in my mind where your, of course, time and place, which I say
Mhm.
mostly for myself. There is a time and place.
Mhm.
And at the drive-through at Culver's might not be the time to share with the cashier what just happened to you.
You know,
That's
it
what
all depends. If the
it
spirit
depends.
leads you, feel free, but you know, it may not go that place.
My kids always
Um,
used to tell me that. They're like, seriously? Why are you sharing that? I'm like, because it's on my
oversharing.
mind.
Exactly. I have to let it escape. I can't keep it all tucked in.
I can't. I can't.
Exactly. So, you know, part of that in getting to know people is that getting to know people is a process. Again, in that friendship mini camp that I have, we talked about the 7 stages of relationships. And understanding which stage you're in really does help to determine the rules as to how much you share and how much of yourself. When I'm talking about being vulnerable, I'm not talking about giving away, you know, all the family secrets and all of that. We're not talking about that kind of oversharing, Natalie. So you can put a lid back on that.
This is why, and this is a good example of I probably should have well, or not clarified with you beforehand because really I'm not sure. So I'm glad you clarified that. That's why I'm trying to get at what does that look like when we talk about
Right.
being vulnerable? Because what I think
Hmm.
of it as, I think is something so much more extreme
Hmm.
that it's not exactly what, the general example that we're talking about, but being able to open up and share, not always putting our best foot forward. Is that
Hmm.
kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah, yeah. And so, you know, now this happened a lot when I was younger because I had relationships and I had things that were going on in my life that I didn't understand and I
Hmm.
didn't know how to process myself. And so I was an oversharer. You know, I thought I was being vulnerable or asking for help for different things. And really all I did was share things that I probably never should have shared with certain people. Maybe the cashier at the Culvers. It could have happened. We will talk about that later. But, you know, it's the thing is that when we don't know these how to be vulnerable, when it's appropriate or even how much vulnerability to toss up, that's where issues really come up and then compounds maybe issues that you have with other people to start with. So, you know, when we're talking about this, and we're wanting the vulnerability, it generally comes up in situations where we're in conflict with somebody, where, you know, we're even questioning, you know, can I trust you? Sometimes vulnerability, like me, you know, back in my early years, was like, well, I'll give it all to you and then I'll see if I can trust you. But really a better way to do it is to do it kind of piecemeal and to share those things with a not with like what I wanted was like, "Can you help me solve this issue?" But really to see who people are and give them the opportunity and to see if this is a connecting point or not. When we shift what we're looking for, um, y or when we shift what we're looking for, then it helps us to traverse and actually get to know people.
Mm.
So but the first thing that we have to do, so let's say that um, that we always talk about kids. So let's just talk about kids.
Hmm.
So both of us have adult children. And so when we have them and, you know, we see them doing something that, you know, may not be good for them, or we can see maybe a couple of steps ahead, you know, the first thing we want to do is to jump in and save them, if you will. But that actually creates conflict. It doesn't allow them to be vulnerable themselves and actually fix whatever is going on or just share with us why they're doing it a certain way. And so the first step really is to create a safe space. And I know that you and I have done this quite a bit when, you know, through your coaching, and it's one of the best tools that I have learned through my training as a life coach. So, when you think about the safe space that you're in when we're coaching, what does that look like to you?
I can say just about anything. I don't have to filter. When you and I are in a coaching session, I'm not worried about that I'm oversharing because that's the time and place.
Mhm.
I don't have any consideration whatsoever that you're going to judge me about whatever it is. And, as you know, and many people who know me or even follow me on social media, I share quite a bit. But I don't worry about that. I don't think about that. I'm able to just go through the process, utilize the coaching tools. I'm not thinking about what you're going to think about me because you're doing just that. You create this safe space where I can kind of unburden myself and freely speak about something with no fear of consequence or judgment whatsoever. You don't
Mhm.
bring and you and I have known each other a long time, but even if it's something that if we don't see eye to eye on or agree on something, you don't bring that into it. That's what's
Mm-mm.
so interesting to me about life coaching and using the tools that you use. It's not about, here's how you're going to solve that problem using the exact examples. It's all about the tools.
Mhm.
And there's that listening. And just by in doing that, I've tried to work on being a better listener when, the example we were using about our adult children, when
Mhm.
they've come to me with concerns or their own issues, is take a step back and try to create that safe space like you do for me and actually listen and not interject all my own concerns and this and that. And I hate to admit it, but it's gone better. Sometimes as a mom, you just want to get in there and be like, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard you say.
And
And
let's fix that right now.
yeah, and as a younger parent, especially in those teenage years, I definitely did too much of that. And
Mhm.
learning how to become a parent of adult children and then learning life coaching tools has really changed how I interact with even my kids.
Mhm. It is. And it's had that same effect on me since I learned it for me and through my life coach. And yeah, as Natalie said, Natalie and I do not see eye to eye on everything, but practicing that non-judgmental and allowing people to be who they are. And it's like when we started off, the vulnerability, being able to show up as who you are, that's what creates relationships. That's where you get those multiple strings of connections where you build a relationship not just on those things you disagree about, which can disconnect, but even some of our things that we don't agree on are still connection points because
Yeah.
it's open conversations and that sort of thing. The way that I learned how to create a safe space was to come into conversations, and this is something that all of y'all can do. It's a little more difficult when we we've been in the habit of wanting to save people or, if you just listen to me, it could be so much better. Um, when we come into it without that, when we come into it without an agenda as to how this should be on the back end, that's where we actually start to begin. English is, yeah, working on that. It's where we begin to create that safe space because when we are not married to an agenda or an end result
Yeah,
for this
not connected to the
conversation
outcome.
or their life not connected to the outcome. Exactly. That's where we can drop into that thing that Natalie and I talk about on a regular basis. We drop into curiosity. When we are married to the outcome, and you've seen this with salespeople that you've dealt with, it's like they're trying to ask you questions to lead you to buying that car or that big O ring or, you know, just some face cream, whatever it is, and you can see it coming a mile away. Well, we can do the same thing in our interpersonal relationships. The other thing that being curious and not being married to the outcome does is that it creates a sense that you're honoring who the other person is and how they think. It's giving space for disagreements,
Mm,
for, where, like Natalie and I don't align on some things, then it's not an issue. It's just an honoring of each other and allowing it to be. A lot of times why we don't do this is because we think if I don't stand up for this, then that reflects on who I am, rather than, just honoring.
Yeah. Is
It's
it because it seems to be one thing I've come to learn is that if someone has a disagreement with me, we don't see eye to eye on something. Okay. The fact that they don't see it exactly as I see it doesn't
Mhm.
change how I see it. It often understanding how that other person came to that point of view helps me understand what I'm looking at even more. And
Mhm.
there's something about, like the willow tree, right? Being more bendable doesn't mean you break, doesn't mean you're snapping, but when you
Mm-mm.
can be more bendable with the wind, you can have more of a full experience. I can understand more. Well, from your point of view, I can see how that's your conclusion and that's your point of view because it's based off your experiences in this world, which are different from mine. And I
Mhm.
really like what you said with, I just had this, I could totally see it with the vulnerability and with relationships. And I hope you're doing friendship camp again. We definitely need to talk about that because there are tools I need to review in that. And what you said about, what you share, right? And how they get to genuinely know you. For me, it's,
Mhm.
I always think about it like if I'm showing someone a house, I want to also bring out, hey, here are the potential issues. Here's what we know about it. And I find myself sometimes doing that with people. Okay, if we're going to be friends, here's what you need to know about me.
Mhm.
There's nothing I won't talk about. I am completely obsessed with spam. I mean,
Exactly. I
it
love
kind of goes
spam
on.
cooking.
Yeah, it kind of goes on and on. So it's so interesting the way that you put it. That's such a good tool.
Mhm. Well, and it leads into the next place when we're not married to the agenda and we're in a place of curiosity, then we can start to test those waters. Basically, when we're walking through relationships, we need to know if are you my people?
Mm.
Are you, and what level? Sometimes we think that, we're only looking for that best friend for the rest of our life. And the reality is that people fill lots of different places in our lives, and we share, everything that we have to share, sometimes with the Culver's cashier, and then only this much with our neighbor. And it all depends on who they are and the relationship that is built. But we can only get there through curiosity and through really understanding who they are. And we do that through the second step, which is testing the waters. This isn't, and we do this testing the waters, not with walls built, but just with, okay, I'm going to share this piece with you. And now I'm going to see, if we relate on this piece. And, we kind of piecemeal it out because when you bring all of yourself to anybody, that's just overwhelming. We're all in our routines for life. We all have our things that we're doing. And, in order to connect, we do need to do it rather methodically. Now, a lot of times, especially when we were in school and we had regular time spent together, this happened kind of magically,
And
but
organically.
and organically, but still it was the same process. But what we were doing, sometimes it's the workplace, sometimes it's school, it's that regular time spent together, those problems and things that we have gone through or overcome together. Those are the situations that allow us to walk through these different stages. And so, but through this, we reveal this or this and just see, can I trust you with this? We're not looking for untrustworthy people. We're just looking for people who honor us and who we are as much as we want to honor them and who they are.
Would that be the
And
same thing as them creating a safe space? When you're sharing something, sometimes when I like my growing up in a cult experience, it's so normal for me to talk about, but it does sometimes overwhelm other people. So if someone's sharing something with me and I want to honor them in that way, would that be the tool then, like you're saying, of me? I would create this safe space of not having judgment about it, but just listening
mhm.
and understanding them more as a person. Is that what that looks like?
That is what that looks like. So let's talk about some of the barriers to that because, sometimes you bring up your cult experience. Some people I'm sure have come at you and gone, "Oh my gosh, how could you ever be part of that?" You know, I listened to Liam Remini and Mike
Mm-hmm.
Render, and it's like aliens and da 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 da, and they'll go through all this stuff. What smart person would actually fall for this? Well, there was an engineering professor that was on there this last week, and he is a smart, learned guy, and then he got involved with Scientology, and then he left after that. But it's why do you do this? And it's that judgment that comes on, and if you're in that place where, oh my gosh, why are you judging me for being stupid? It's an immediate disconnect.
Mm-hmm.
And so did that answer your question? Did I go
Yeah,
there?
yeah, it totally did, and it's very much how, and that's sometimes often what happens. Well, I never could have fallen for something like that. Well, one, I grew up in it, did not have much of a
Mhm.
choice, but many people, how they get into it, it's just they're lacking that perspective. So one way that I help them understand that is say, okay, let's say you knew nothing about Christianity, and I came
Mhm.
along and told you about a virgin birth and about, drinking the blood of Christ. If you knew nothing about what that represented and what that meant, you would think it was weird.
Mhm.
And that pretty much, answers that question. And it's that it happens very slowly. But you're right. And I've even been on the receiving end of certain things, and I've had to catch myself from going, questioning in a way that would come across as I'm judging them. And
Mhm.
being more aware of that, the really cool thing is it's really helped my relationships, personal and even in business, just be deeper, be
Mhm.
more, more real, and just be able to be in that moment of, okay, sometimes things are absolutely fabulous and sometimes they just are not,
Mhm.
and then they are, and then they are not. And
Mhm.
the people closest to us to be able to, roll with that. And like you said, I like how you explained creating that safe space, because I think that is just the starting point for all of
Mhm.
this when we talk about vulnerability.
Well, and within that safe space, to some people it looks like by getting curious and questioning and things like that. To some people, means this is something that we talk about a lot on Life Coach Friday. What are you making it mean? To a lot of people, it means that you're agreeing with them or you're being convinced of it rather than just purely being curious.
Mm-hmm.
And if the goal is to connect and you do that through curiosity, it doesn't mean that you agree. It doesn't mean that you're being convinced of it or that you have to change who you are, your values or your beliefs in order to make this connection. It is simply honoring who they are.
Mm-hmm.
um, Sometimes when we get into these things, and we're talking about vulnerability and, can I trust people? Sometimes if you're like me, you'll trust first without any evidence. And it is one of those things that, as lovely as it has been, I have set myself up to fall in love with potential. So I don't actually see who this person is or if they can be trusted with this information. I just kind of extend it out, and then, it's a crapshoot to see what it is. But it has affected me in people who I have chosen as friends, and all sorts of relationships that I've had. It has, maybe you look at a job and you go, well, it's okay, but maybe it can turn into this. When we fall in love with potential, we don't make as clear of decisions. And part of being vulnerable and part of being accepting to create this safe space so that we can see ourselves, we can see them, we can see a situation, we make so much stronger decisions than we do when we're just, oh, well, maybe it's not like that. Maybe they'll change, or this opportunity will come, or things like that. Now, I'm not talking about giving the benefit of the doubt, which is what this can kind of look like, but it's just in the context of when to be vulnerable and that sort of thing. Because what we're trying to do is that we're trying to connect with other people, and we do that through showing who we really are.
So what happens then if so you're testing the waters, as you say, and maybe it's a new friend or even a new romantic relationship, because how you were explaining it, that's kind of what I was thinking about, that, falling in love with potential
Mhm.
versus really seeing the person in front of you and appreciating who they are and sharing authentically who you are. How does that come together? How do you, if if I'm the individual and I'm making new friends,
Mhm.
and or actually flip it, if I'm sharing something, how do you, when you test the waters, how do you know if it's safe to be vulnerable with that person or not? Is it just if they come back from a place of a lot of judgment, or how do you maneuver that then?
It's a lot of in the moment. I've been reading a lot on toxic people, if you will, and that's not what we're talking about right now today. We can do a thing on toxic people, which is um, another subject altogether. But just navigating people. One of the things that this book brought up was, when you're around them, is it an energy suck or is it just kind of energizing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If they cancel plans on you, are you relieved at it, or are you kind of disappointed and you're ready to make new plans, type of a thing. We have to watch for those internal cues to really see how these people match up with us. And when we see it on a non-potential landscape, really working to see who we are and who we are around this person. And do we like that version of ourselves that we become when we do these things or we have those conversations? Those are the cues that we're trying to pick up on to test those waters to see, well, this relationship can go this far, but because of this, this is only as far as it can go with me. We need to be brave enough to make those decision points for ourselves. And as I said before, we're not looking for that long term best friend. We have all these different places where people can plug into. And that's part of what I do in Friendship Minicamp is that we talk about all these different types of friends in addition to the relationship, the linear path that we take from meeting somebody to, I'll show up at 3 a.m. and help you out type of a thing.
And bring my shovel and ask no questions.
Shh. There are a lot of secrets here, so shh. And so, yeah,
I gotta tell you, I once texted a friend of mine, and I meant to text my sister who I was taking to the airport, and I had said something like, I'm gonna be there in 30 minutes, and then we need to head to the airport right away. And I instead texted a very good girlfriend of mine, and her response was, okay, what should I wear? I mean, she didn't know why. She didn't know what was happening. All she knew is I said, look, I'm going to be there in 30 minutes and we're going to have to go to the airport. It just sounded so like it was a thing. And I was
if
like, I
that was
just
in my
love.
test as to who this person was
Yeah.
and how
Yep.
committed they were to you,
Yep.
that was it.
And I've done it with my sister too years ago. I remember telling her, hey, there's something I need to go take care of, and I need you to come along as a witness.
Oh, goodness.
And she's like,
Exactly.
I can be ready in about 30 minutes. Okay. Just no questions. Those are my people.
Seriously. Yes, they are. And you know what? That is the brilliant thing about this work. This work that comes with life coaching is that you figure out who you really are and you can identify your people, the ones who are the ones that just light you up and who support you and just help you create a life that you always thought was possible, but now actually is. And so, oh my gosh, I love that story.
There
I'm
should
going to
be a
turn my
test for
phone
that.
on. However, I'm about 15 hours away, so it'll be a little bit.
Yeah. Those are very, very workable tools. And I can see how that really does answer the question of, when it is safe to be vulnerable or not, and how it's such a two-way street. It is not just a matter of us as individuals saying, hey, here's what I need from you. I need you to listen to this without judgment. It's
Mhm.
often when we can model that in our relationships, it's more likely to be reciprocated, when we don't even necessarily have to have that conversation, when we just model it and create that safe space so that our significant other, friends, family, whatever it is, can come to us and share something. There, I've noticed the more that I do that, the more that's reciprocated for me. Because there's something about knowing when there's someone that you know is just not going to judge you no matter what it is. You're so much more open, not just to share, but to help that person, because that's such a, you don't find that every day with most relationships.
We haven't been trained to do it. We've been trained to be contentious or just follow the crowd, do what everybody else does. And I really like what you said, because it reminds me of the Marianne Williamson quote that when we are brave enough to show up as all that we are, then we give permission to other people to do the same. And that's the same in these safe places. I mean, you can't convince somebody to believe something, but through your actions, through who you are, through the safe spaces that you create,
Yeah.
you encourage them to come in and say, hey, how can I do that too?
That's absolutely true. Did you see the Molly's comment there?
I
It
did
goes
not.
right in alignment with what you just said. You can see it. I've got my
Yes,
bifocals on, so I'm like, everybody, take a
we're
good
the
look at my
only
nose while I read this.
we're the only us there is, and the world needs more of us. Amen, Molly.
Yeah.
Paraphrase Jen Cicero, if not a direct quote. Yes, is she the badass woman?
Yeah, she wrote that book. Absolutely fantastic.
I haven't read
really
it yet.
liked it.
Girl, I'm behind.
Yeah, I did it on
my
Audible
table.
twice.
Okay, I'm gonna have to get it on Audible.
It's
Gonna
so
have to get it
good.
on Audible. So,
Well, I think we really tackled this. At least we made a huge dent in it. Is there anything that you want to share before we head out?
if anybody out there is real curious about this and some of these tools and how it can work practically in your life, I encourage you to set up some time with me. The first call is always completely free. And so you can go out to connectedlifecoaching.net, and choose a day and time that works for you, and let's have a conversation. We're going to talk about where you are now, where you want to be, and the steps that go from here to there. You will have such great awareness by the end of it. You may choose to just take that information and run and do it yourself, or you may choose to come and work with me. Either way is fine with me. So I encourage you to come meet me, and let's have a wonderful conversation.
Yes, and join us again. Every other Friday, we do Life Coach Friday, and it's streamed onto multiple community pages because it's all about creating community and connection. And these are great tools that we can all use in and around our communities to be able to just do that so much better. So that is why we do this. This is why you're going to see it all over the place on social media, especially on Facebook. So you can head over to Connected Life Coaching on Facebook or Natalie Webster Realtor, and you can watch the other earlier videos in Life Coach Fridays that we've done as well. Yes, so thank you, everybody. Thank you, Annette, and we will see you in 2 weeks. I can't see my end thing. I need to get stronger glasses. There it is.
Bye, everybody.